Today we're going to go over how to do a transition in any kind of situation, any kind of lineup that you have. Whatever you're going to run into in the field, it's always going to be wonky. The systems are doing nothing but getting bigger. So we're just going to kind of go over the way I think it's easiest to do this. There are other ways. Everybody's who's been in the trade has ways to do this. This is the way I've found personally the quickest, easiest, and the most versatile in any situation. So essentially, obviously, we tore our system out. We got a little mock-up right here. While you tear your system out, always make sure that this is going to be big enough. So if you have a tiny duct in this giant system, obviously you want to check that for sure. But let's get down to the transition. Pretty basic. It's essentially a system of just blanks and then tracing out the blanks and then putting them together. So we got our system here. Everything is slit, so I don't have any drive on here, no drive ears. So the first thing I'm going to do is, obviously, I'm going to put my slip on there. So I'm going to measure up right here. I have about 19 and a half. I'm going to cut that in half, make that about 19. Let's get that half off. Hey, look at that, I already have some cut. And we're just going to pop them on. I'm going to do the same with my width. Got about 14, gonna go 14 and a half. Pop that on. Another 14 and a half, it's all the same size. And what I'm doing is I'm making sure, I like to have my slip on the outside. So this guy is going in on the outside, not the inside. Certain situations may call for it to go on the inside, but generally this just seems to be the easiest for me. Okay, so I have my system set in place, I have my slips on, so now I need to go cut my blanks out. So to measure my blanks, I have plenty of room here. If you're in a tighter closet, you might not have this room, but if you do have the room, just go ham with it. Make sure you just have enough length and enough height to make this thing work. So I'm essentially going from here, my widest point, I'm going front and back first. So my widest point, I'm kind of roughing it out here, is roughly about 30 inches. So I'm gonna measure that. I have all this room, so I'm gonna go like 35. Pop on like that. So, okay, 35 inches wide. Make note of that, write that down, however you wanna do it. 35 inches wide, because what I'm gonna have to do is, once I get this blank in there, I'm gonna have to do a 1-inch bend on the inside. So I need to make sure I have enough metal to do that 1-inch bend. So after I get the widest point from my front and back, so my back is the same here, so I'm just gonna go 35. It gives me plenty of ample room to do what I need to do. I'm gonna go and get my height. So the height can vary from side to side. This one looks like it's lined up pretty much the same, but I'm gonna check them both anyway. So for my height, up to the bottom of the drive, I have about 15 and a half. Or bottom of the slip, I'm sorry, about 15 and a half. So I wanna add an inch, so I go up into my slip, obviously. And then what we're gonna do is, on our bottom here, we're gonna do a 1/2 inch bend going out. So if I have 15 and a half to the bottom of my slip, that means I need 16 and a half at least to go up in it. And then I wanna put that little 1/2 inch bend on the bottom, so I'm gonna make it 17. So I'm gonna make this 17 tall. So I got 35 wide, 17 tall. And I'm gonna check my back here real quick. My back's a little further back, but the bottom of the slip is reading 16. So I think I'm gonna go 17 and a half this time, because it's a 1/2 inch further back than the front was. So that's why it's good to measure both sides, because we'd be coming up short if we didn't on the back. So we got 17 and a half in the back, 17 in the front. That's for our 1/2 inch. So 35 by 17, and then 35 by 17 and a half. All right, cool, so I got all these measurements, and this is for my front and back. So now I'm gonna go draw out my sheet of metal, get these 2 templates cut out, and then we'll be back and kind of see what we do for our sides. So one thing that these 2 measurements have in common is our length. They're both gonna be 35. That's giving us plenty of room with all the extra duct. I have 28 gauge, 36 inch by 8 foot metal here. So I know right off the bat, just coming from the supply house, this is 36 inches wide. So I said 35. Well, why would I make a 1-inch cut up here? It makes no sense. It's like wasting metal. So I'm just gonna make this 36 inches wide now, just because that's the length, the width of my metal. So all I'm really worried about here cutting out is just my height now for my front and my back. So I said 17 and 17 and a half. So all we're gonna do is just take our tape measure, take a marker, 17, super easy, 17. I just take slip, drive, flat edge, piece of cardboard, whatever you got to make a straight edge. Let's get your 2 marks just so you're not going wavering too much. Bam. Kind of trace it over. Bam. And then I prefer these. If you guys like to use the little ones, that's cool too, but this is a little less capable of making the fish hooks, which are always fun to fit your hand on. All right, great. Blank number 1. Now we got a 1/2 inch difference on this one, so we're gonna be 17 and a half. Same deal, rinse and repeat. 17 and a half. Bam, 17 and a half. Our little straight edge. I measured something wrong. I did 18 and a half. Forgot my glasses today. All right. All right, straight edge, bam. And we'll carry it over. Bam. Cool. Cut out blank number 2. Now it's good to remember that blank number 2 is our backside, not our front. So these things are only a 1/2 inch apart. So when we get these cut, it's gonna be a little difficult to kind of tell the two difference. So like sometimes I'll put a little tag down here like 1/2 inch or B for back or something, just to know like that's my back template. Cool, that's my back plate. All right, cool. So now we got our front and our back cut out. We're gonna hop back over to our system and we're gonna kind of trace these out and then get them cut, bent, and in place so we can get our sides done. So we measured up, we got really long. We said 35, but we just went 36 because that was with the metal. Figured why make more cuts than we have to. So this one I've labeled 1/2 inch or back, you know, because we know we have a 1/2 inch bigger back here. So all I'm doing is slipping this guy up in there and making my marks. So it's real simple. So I got this big piece. You can just cut it 1 inch past, you know what I mean? 1 inch past your biggest mark if you have a very confined space, but I find the bigger it is, the less room there is for error. So all I'm doing is I'm marking up here, bam, mark right there, marking right here, because I'm gonna go on the inside of this. Marking right there, doing the same over here. Marking on my inside edge, marking where that slip's gonna hit the side. So bam. Yes. Pop it on there. Make sure I have plenty over here. Make sure I have plenty over here. Because all we need is an inch on either of these sides, but just, it's a really hard thing to measure from here to here when you're by yourself. So we guesstimate and we just overestimate with it. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna come around the side. I'm marking where this slip's coming across right here. And then I'm marking in this corner right here. Because we're gonna push up against this and we're gonna have a lip that goes across here. So bam, bam. That's this side. We're gonna go over to our other side. We're gonna mark right here. And then again, right where this guy's at. Cool. And that's all we gotta do with that. And we wanna label what our top is, because we're gonna be flipping around. So top, front. I know it's a front piece, I know that's the top. Easy enough. All right, cool. Okay, so we've got our two blanks marked and labeled, so we're good to go. So now we're gonna do our 1 inch. We're just gonna draw it on, and all we're doing literally is just connecting these 2 dots with it. Bam, bam. So the cool thing about slip and drive is that they're roughly 1 inch wide. So we're gonna use that as our template for our 1 inch. So I'm gonna do on the outside of it. This is the line I'm actually gonna be cutting. I'm gonna draw on the inside just to give the idea, just to kind of visually show you what the 1 inch is. Bam. And that 1 inch is gonna get bent in. So we're gonna do the same thing over on this side for our crazy weird angle. By the way, if you see that in someone's house, just run. Just kidding. And then we're gonna go on the outside is the line we're cutting. And just to show us for our 1 inch, we're gonna go on the inside here. Okay. Now we're gonna go ahead and cut it out real quick. So it's a little bit of a waste of metal because we obviously, over measured for this just for our convenience, doing this by ourselves. So I cut out my outside edge and my bend is gonna be with that. So I'm gonna cut this guy off. Great. Like I said, a little bit of a waste of metal, but saves us time in the long run. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to cut our corners. Now, some guys like to do it exact, bam, and then bam, corner like that. I just like to save time and just lop off the corner. So, bam. I'll show you why in a second. Okay, cutting our corners off. Cutting our corners off. The idea of cutting our corners off is we got 1 inch going in. Here's our top, 1 inch going into our slip, and then our sides are gonna need to be slipped. And then for the bottom, we're just gonna have a 1/2 inch bend going the other way. All right, so first thing I do, you gotta have one of these trusty little bendy bars. They're awesome. So I wanna get my front little edge that I was talking about. This is my bottom. So these are going in, because that's the back. I'm gonna flip it, here's my front. So I'm gonna use the 1/2 inch part. So I've got 1/2 inch, 1 inch. So I just need a little bend just to get my screws into. And we're just gonna give it a good old 90 degree. Some extreme cases where you have to do it a little bit more than others, but you can generally just tell when you're doing it. So got my 1/2 inch bend, I'm gonna flip it back over. I'm gonna do my 1 inch bend in. And this one, always just do a good 90. Just a 90 degree angle. Bam. That's why it's good to label it, because you're flipping this thing around all the time. Sometimes it's easy to lose track, then you're kind of up the creek. Awesome. So there's our back. And this is how it's gonna sit. Well, this is the back part of it, so bam. It's mirrored what we've traced out with our 1 inch bends, and we got our 1/2 inch little lip. We have our blanks cut out, we have our blanks all bent up. I have my edge on the bottom, I have my 2 guys in. I have my top back piece. That's gonna just give me my orientation. So a lot of times I'll start with the back first, just because a lot of times you're in a small closet right here. So you actually have to kind of slip it up in, sometimes with just the room you have. So kind of get up back there, go like this, get it on. Okay, looks like I got a little bit of an issue. So because my duct is tilted a little bit to the side, a lot of times in the field you can just go bam, bam. I have screws in this sucker, it's not going anywhere. So I can't do that necessarily here. So where I'm stuck with is, I'm just gonna have to trim off some of this top. So this guy's angled slightly down. So I'm about probably like 1/8 of an inch too long. So no problem, just gonna take it off real quick. If you want to draw it, you can. Kind of just more experience. And I'll just literally just shear off a little bit of an angle of this guy. See what that gets us. Bring it back again. I think we might have to cut again. Yep, a little bit more. Okay, gotta go a little bit more. Remember, we have 1 inch going into that slip, so we have room for error here. All right. Hopefully that's enough. Cool. Yep. So she's tight, but she's in there. So that gives me my 1 inch bend in here. I have a 1/2 inch little lip there, and I'm up in here. And granted, that's slanted right there, but once we get this all sealed up and taped up, we shouldn't even notice that. Screwing this guy, a lot of times you're gonna be in really tight position. So, you know, if you can get these back corners, awesome. You know, try to get that back in there. Get that back in there. Worst case scenario, if you really wanna get it well, you can put a slit back here and try to slip that in, or bring it from the side if you have some room or something like that. But try to get that back fastened, not just tape. And obviously, you know, worst case scenario, you have all this. You have this lip right here. You can go through there. Just be careful when you tape the back of it, because obviously you got the sharp end of a screw that no one's gonna see. No one's gonna really, hopefully, be reaching back there except for you. But just a thought of how to fasten it. So, yeah. So we would be screwing down, bam, bam. We're gonna forego the screws for right now. And then we're gonna go to our front. Okay, so now we've got our back end all slipped up on our weird, crazy angle little box we have up there, unfortunately. All we're doing is popping our front end. Now we're just popping this up temporarily just so we can get our measurements for the side. So I'm just gonna go in like an angle like this. See, our front fits nicely because there's not really much of an angle without here. So when I'm looking down here, I have 1 inch in, 1 inch in. Got my little 1/2 inch deal right here. Well, this side is the same way. And now what we got to do, very similar to our front side. So it's kind of like we repeat the process, but for our sides. So can you pass me that tape measure, please? Whoop, put that one out.
Man, I was trying to make you look cool, man. Catch that, boy.
So I'll start shooting like this.
Thanks, man. Okay, so we're gonna be repeating the same process on our sides that we did our front. So I guess we'll do it from this side, just kind of give you guys an idea. So I'm trying to find my widest point. Man, this really is wonky off. That's okay though. A little bit of play there. So it looks like one end's higher than the other two, so we'll run into this in the field sometimes. So looks like this is my widest point. This guy is not my widest point, but this is in line with itself. It's pretty straight, so I just know I have to measure my width here. So I'm not adding inches on my sides. This is just a blank plate that these guys are gonna go into. So got about 14. So 14, now I gotta get my length. So go up, it's about 18.5 to the bottom of the slip. I'm gonna put that to 19.5, and I want my little 1/2 inch bend, so I'm gonna make that 20. So adding 1.5 inches to 18.5, which is 20. So I got 14 by 8 by 20 on this side, and then same width over here. 14, yep, it's the same, it's a squared up by, this is 18.25. So I'm just gonna subtract quarter from 20, so 19.75. So 14 by 20 and 14 by 19.75. I'm gonna go cut my other blanks and then get this thing all put together. All right guys, so going back to my sheet metal here, I have all those scraps, all those crazy curly cues, all those really sharp pieces of metal from when I did my front templates. So obviously I'm in someone's house. When one of these gets lost and they find it later with their foot once you're gone, it's not a good situation. So try to keep track of all your metal pieces. I try to clean up as I go. So in this case, I'm just gonna make sure all my little metal shavings are in one nice little spot. It's accounted for. If you want to go crazy with it, you can literally count how many you've cut just by it's 8 for a piece of metal. I'm going to set them safely aside and make sure all those pieces are accounted for. Because that in a kid's foot, that in a homeowner's foot, doesn't matter. It's not a good look. Okay, so we're going to do our sides. Same thing. We're just cutting a blank. We have our measurements. So we're doing 20 and 19.75 is our length, or our two different lengths, and then we're doing 14 as our width for both of them. So we'll do the same kind of deal. I try to conserve as much metal as possible. So really honestly, 20 this way will probably be my best bet. And I'll just cut, just to preserve the rest of the piece, 20 out here, and I'll lop my little 1/4 inch off for my other piece later. So I'm gonna go 20. And we're going 14. I know what 14 plus 14 is, so we're just gonna do that right now. So I got 14, and then I need another one 14 wide. So that would be 28. Good old elementary school math is paying off. 14 and 28. Awesome. Okay, now we're just gonna draw our line. So same as before, just lining up the two with my little straight edge, whatever that may be. Bam. Now I'm just gonna, while I'm drawing and use my straight edge, I'm just gonna do both these. I'm just gonna do all my cuts at once, all my drawing at once. And if you notice, I'm gonna be cutting all the way right here. So this is a fresh piece of metal for whatever I gotta do it for next. And I'll have this nice little square piece for patching stuff, for whatever the heck you need. They're great little spare pieces to have around the truck. These is 20, the other one's 22, but we need this one to be 19 3/4. So if you want to measure out a 1/4 inch, by all means, go for it if you want to be exact with it. This method of doing a transition isn't necessarily an exact method. In other words, as you guys can kind of tell, it's kind of just kind of trace and kind of feel it out, see what you got to do to get this thing in and get it looking nice too. So I'm just gonna go ahead and measure that 1/4 inch out. You've been doing it long enough, you could probably know what a 1/4 inch is and just cut it off. But bam. And same thing as last time, a 1/4 inch, when you're looking at these squares, doesn't seem like a big difference. But when you line them all up, you can kind of tell, but you're rolling around. So I'm just gonna make sure I just, I know that's a 1/4 inch off. That's just my way of knowing. However you want to mark it, you want to put your name on it, whatever. Cool. These are my 2 blanks. So we're gonna go back over to our template and get rocking and rolling. Okay, so we got our blanks cut out. This is my 20-inch piece. I just remembered that this is my 20-inch piece. If you want to mark it as you go, like saying, hey, this is 20, this is not the other one's a 1/4 inch off, up to you. So all I'm doing, same thing I did last time. Coming in here, I got my front and my back piece, bam, and I'm making sure all my stuff is covered. So I'm pretty flat in the front, and my back side has a little bit of an angle in. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna reach around back, literally just trace the part I need to cut off to make that work. Get a video of that. So bam, that's my piece, and that's just the curvature of this duct, man. And I'll label this, top, that's however you want to orientate it, top right. So I know that. So I'm gonna set that aside, go over to our other side and do our left side real quick. Got my other template, I've labeled this 1/4 inch. I know there's a 1/4 inch off this. That's why I needed to do it. Putting it right up to it. And this side, just because this duct's a little wonky, looks like I got a little overlap. That's okay for how we're gonna do this, because we're gonna have a slip in there and that 1 inch will make up for that. So I'm flat on my front side, I don't have to trace anything there. I'm just gonna kind of do the old reach around and hit the back. Bam. Cool. And we got top left. So there's my left one, that's my right one. And we'll cut them out, bend them up, and put all this bad boy together. So all I've done is just cut out that line that I traced. And I've just nipped my corners. I didn't do it like as big of a cut off the corners as I did with the other one, because I don't have bends going in. This is literally just gonna sit flat in there, and it's gonna slip into those 1 inch things we did. However, I do wanna put that 1/2 inch little bend on my bottom. So pop a little 1/2 inch bend, and then bam, again. So these are a lot more angled, so I may wanna kind of think ahead on this a little bit. So this is my top right, I got an angle like that, like it's coming down. So I know that angle is gonna be a little tough for a 90 degree. So I'm gonna go a little over with this one, just because I saw that, almost call it like a 45 or like a 50 or 60 degree angle, kind of like that, where it's almost facing up. So when I go in like that, it's not sitting flat. You know what I mean? I may even want to go up a little bit more than that, but that's just to make sure that you're gonna be okay when you get into that weird situation. Also the same on the top. So if I'm going like this, I gotta kind of think ahead. It's going into a straight piece of slip. So, obviously I'm out here like this, but it's gotta go in like that. Now with 28 gauge metal, you could just slip it in and bend it to your will if you wanted to. That's no problem, but I'm gonna give it just a little bit of a bend, just to kind of help myself out. A little bit goes a long way when you do this. So don't overdo it or else you're gonna be out in there like this, like, oh shoot. And you have to be bending it back. So we're just gonna do a little bit of a bend. I know it's going in there like that. I know it's the right side. So this is my 1 inch, just going into my slip on the top. Not much. Very little bit of a bend. Like I said, a little goes a long way. So all right, cool. I'm gonna repeat the same step with this guy and then meet you guys back over there. We're just gonna set our front piece aside for now. I'm gonna pop my slip back up in here. Okay, so now I need to slip all 4 of these sides. So all my bends, you know, I imagine my front piece right here, I need to slip all 4 of them. So I've gone ahead and just already measured 17, 17, 17, and 17. So really easy for me, I just cut 4 pieces of slip 17. Something important to do though, is when you do it, whenever you're cutting slip, it pinches it. So it's always good to just take a screwdriver. You don't have to go all the way down or slide down like that. That kind of loses the integrity of it holding up there. Just take it and just give it a little twist, just to help you get your ends in just a little bit easier. And do it to both sides on all of them. If you don't, that's okay. However, it's gonna be a little bit trickier sometimes when you do this. Okay, so I'm gonna pop my slips on my back. I wanna come in from the outside on all these. So I got my 1 slip going in to this guy. Bam, that's all right, cool. And then checking this guy, okay, so this is the outside, and I'm putting this on the inside. Cool. So it looks like my one angle wasn't quite a 90 degrees, so I'm actually gonna just take this slip and just bend a little bit in. Cool, that worked out. All right, so now I got slip on 2 sides. I'm gonna go ahead and pop up my 2 side pieces. So I got labeled here, top right, okay, cool, it's my top right. I said I got my little bend in right there to account for that, and I over bent down here to account for that a little bit. So sometimes it's easy to go on the top, sometimes the side. Sometimes you can just slip it down like this. So I just went in my slip, just pushed this guy down. Now I just got to get it into the side of this guy. Bam, this is where kind of splitting that slip apart really comes into play. Makes life a little easier. So bam, cool. Looks like I'm pretty lined up, awesome. Like I said, it's a little wonky right there, but because I had the 1 inch, it allowed me to do kind of what I needed to do. And a lot of times you will have some canvas up, which is also helpful to do, but this you can do without canvas if you don't choose to do that. All right, so I'm gonna grab my other side in real quick, same way. Just gonna slip in from my top and then meet up with my side. Cool, looks good. Awesome, so, all right, great. Now, the last thing I have to do is my front. So obviously I need 2 slips right here. I already have my slip right there. I've already cut them, I've already split the ends, make sure they're okay, and I still want to go on the outside. So checking here, inside, outside. On the inside. Notice I haven't screwed anything in yet on my sides, or even pretended to screw anything on the sides. Just because sometimes it's easier if it's just not screwed in, if you have to flat this out a little bit, or that out a little bit to get our front end. So we'll screw it all when we're all put together. Popping this guy on. And lastly, I think it's the most satisfying piece is the front. We're just gonna slip in the top first. Slip in the top, get it over to where we wanna go. Kind of pull this out a little bit. So we're gonna put a little pressure on the top. Get that first little corner in. Check over here, get that corner in. And bam. So now we have all 4 sides covered. Looks clean. All we really have to do any tape on is our top right here. Here's where I cut those corners out. I cut them big. If you cut them a little closer, you can close that gap up a little bit, but that gap will still exist. So, you know, you're calling how exact you want to be with it. But generally I'll tape my sides and my back first, leaving something right here. So I have a nice clean piece right here, nice and straight. And I'll obviously take a tape squeegee and squeegee that out. Same thing with my bottoms. So I'm going to do screw, at least 2 screws per screw. Get them down in the cabinet, and by the time it's done, it should, look like this. However you want to do it. This system can be way over here. This will work. This system can be out here. It'll work. It just changes what you're doing and how much metal you're going to need, obviously. So I found this is the most versatile way to put a transition together in the field with very minimal tools. All you're using is a bending bar, a screwdriver, and a pair of shears. So that'll do it. So anyway, guys, man, thanks for hanging out with me, and yeah, happy transitioning.